Hi, in this tutorial, what you're going to do is you're going to start off from a blank Blender 2.8 screen, and then you're going to work your way up to this stylized character mesh that you see here. What you're going to do is take basic shapes. You're going to take those basic shapes and form them into the shape of a basic male. You're then going to use the boolean modifier to join those shapes together. Those shapes will then be brought into sculpt mode, and in sculpt mode, you'll work towards this three male stylized character mesh that you see here. Additional things that you're going to learn are how to make teeth and gums, how to make eyeballs and eyelids, eyebrows, as well as hair. This tutorial is fully narrated. It is taught in a step-by-step fashion. Not only do I tell you what I'm doing, I try to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. Hi, this is Ali Arango of LittleGuyCGI.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make a male body in Blender 2.8. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is load in some reference image. For those of you who have watched the videos on this channel for a while, you might be saying, wow, he's been using a lot of reference images recently. And yeah, that is true. And to be honest, it's because Blender 2.8's grease pencil is really that good. So it's going to be a grease pencil drawing that we bring in. So I'm going to left click. I am then going to press 1 on my number keypads. If you don't have a number keypad, you can go to View, go down to View Point, and then you can select your views from here. We're going to select this cube. I'm going to press X. I'm then going to press Delete to delete the cube. I'm now going to hold Shift, press A. This brings up our Add To menu. I'm then going to go down to Image. We're then going to go over to Reference. Left click on Reference. I'm going to go to where that reference is at, which is in this folder here. I can click these 4 squares so I can see the actual picture. I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to select Load Reference Image. Okay, and there you can see the reference image. What we're going to do now is we're going to hold Shift, press A. This brings up our Add To menu. We're going to go to Mesh. We're then going to go to UV Sphere. Here's our UV Sphere here. I wanted to bring this in so we can match up the head of our reference image with this UV Sphere. This UV Sphere is going to make up the main part of the head. The tutorial is going to be on the body. However, it helps to have a basic head to go along with that body. So what we're going to do is we're going to left click on this image here. We're going to go to our menu over to our right. If you look 3 buttons up from the bottom, you'll see a image button where you have the option to adjust your reference image that you brought in. So what we want to do is look to where we see depth and then select front. And what that did was that made it so that this image is showing up in front of our UV sphere. However, it also made the UV sphere look like it disappeared. And that's because of this transparency right here. So what you want to do is left click and drag this down. And then you can see, like, as we drag that transparency down, now we can see our reference image as well as our UV sphere that we brought in. Okay, so with the reference image selected, we're going to press S to scale. And what we're doing is I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. We want to get this UV sphere so it's about the size of the top part of our head. I'm going to hold Control and press G, and that brought up my manipulator here. So I held Control, then I pressed G. Most of the time I do it quick, just Control G, and that's just a shortcut to make your manipulator tool pop up, and that's if your space bar, by the way, is set up for tools rather than for search. If you do search, when you press spacebar G, you won't get the manipulator. If you don't want to use that shortcut, you can just click here. This will do the same thing. So with this image selected, I'm going to take the manipulator and push this down. So again, I'm just trying to match up the top part of our head with the UV sphere. So I'm going to press S to scale this up, push this down. Okay, that looks good right there. Okay, when you look to your left, you can see we're in a front orthographic view. If you don't know what orthographic means, that means a total straight on view is the best way I can think of right now. When we manipulate our view, if you're in a position where you're wondering where we're at as far as the view, you can just look this left-hand corner and this will let you know which view we're in. We have this image set up for the front view. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel back. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. With this selected, I'm going to hold Shift, press D, and then I'm going to right click. And what we just did was we duplicated this reference image. So now what we're going to do is with this duplicate selected, and you can see here was this empty is our original reference image. Here's our new reference image right here. With this reference image, this is currently named empty.001. We're going to press R to rotate on the Z axis 90, and then we can press enter or left click to lock that in. Now what I'm going to do is press 3 on the number my number keyboard keys. Not sure if I'm saying that right. The keys are all the way on the right on your keyboard. If you don't have those keys, you can go to view, go down to viewpoint, and then you can select your view from here. So this is the right view. It looks like we're in the same view as when we are in our front view. We're not. We're in the right view. You can see that from right here. So with this selected, we're going to take the manipulator and just push this reference image into place. As we go through this tutorial, the reference image here is here to help you. It's not, perfectly set up to as you model. It's a guide, and I think it's a useful guide, but don't think like this has to be perfectly matched up. It's just think of it as more of a help. Okay, so with this setup, how this is, what we're going to do is I'm going to press 1 on my number keyboard to go back to front view. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this empty here. I could have clicked here as well. And I am going to, before clicking anything there, see here where we see display orthographic, display perspective. I don't particularly like when this image is displayed perspective. If I hold the middle mouse button and turn, see how you can see the images there? I don't like that. I'm going to press 1 to go back to front view. So I'm going to unclick display perspective. I'm also going to turn this transparency down more. And now that I have that display perspective turned off, I'm going to double click here. I'm going to name this front. And then I'm going to, with that front, I'm going to unclick this arrow here. So now we can't select that front view. So now what I'm going to do is press 3 on my number keypad to go to a right view. I'm going to go to this empty here. I'm looking down to the bottom right, display perspective. I'm going to take away the check mark next to display perspective. I'm also going to lower the transparency here as well. I'm then going to go up to the empty.001. I double clicked on that. Now I'm going to name this right, short for right view. Then I'm going to click this arrow to take to unselect that arrow. So now we can't move this image by grabbing it by accident. So now I'm going to press 1 to go back to front view, and we should be set up for our reference image. We should be good to go as far as that. Okay, basically what we're going to do here is we're going to take basic shapes. We're going to block out this image. We're then going to join those images together using the boolean modifier or the boolean add-on. In this case, we'll be using the boolean add-on. Once we join those shapes together, then we'll sculpt out the rest of the body to try to get it fairly close looking to our reference image here. Okay, so I'm going to hold shift, press B to draw a zoom box to zoom in close to the head. With this UV sphere selected, I'm going to hold control, press 2. And what that did was that was a shortcut to put a subdivision surface modifier on. I could have clicked add modifier and went to subdivision surface and then selected view 2. I would have had the same result. With this selected here now, I'm going to right click and then select shade smooth. Also, this button looks like a wrench. This is our modifier button. Now with that UV sphere selected, I'm going to click apply. Now I'm going to press 3 on my number keypad. I'm going to pay attention to this line running down here, this line running right here. I'm going to hold shift, press D, and then right click. We just duplicated the UV sphere here. I'm going to push this down. When I push this down, I'm pushing this UV sphere down so that it's in alignment with this green line right here. I'm then going to push this forward. And what I want is, I want the back of this to line up with the back of the jaw right there. Okay, so now with this lined up and with this selected, we're going to left click and then go to sculpt mode. Okay, here in sculpt mode, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our grab brush. I'm going to press the F key, drag my mouse back. That lets my area of influence for this brush get bigger. I want this brush to be a little bigger than the UV spheres. And then what I'm going to do is, I didn't press anything yet. I'm not pressing, I'm just showing you. I'm going to pull back again. Then I might have to pull a couple more times, basically to get this sphere to this shape right here. And the reason why we use a sphere, and I'm saying this because when I first learned how to do this, I was like, why use a ball for the bottom part of the jaw? When from the side, this is going to look strange, the sphere, but from the front, it gives us a nice, circular front to the bottom part of the jaw to work with. So that's why. So anyway, I'm going to left click now and drag. Then I let go, left click and drag again. I let go again, grabbed again. So now we have this, kind of strange looking thing right there, right? So now we're going to press 1 to go to front view. We're going to hold shift. We're currently on grab, right? I'm holding shift now. When we hold shift, we automatically go to a smooth brush. Where's the smooth brush? I'll let go of shift, by the way. This is a smooth brush here. So when you hold shift, even though you're on another brush, you temporarily go to the smooth brush. So now I'm re-holding shift and I am left clicking to drag. And you can see that let me smooth out the front of this sphere. Oh, so that works very well. Okay, let's make it easier for us to work as we go through this. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to click on this shading to the upper right. When I clicked on that, you can see this ball. You can see this, flat studio matte cap right here. We're going to select matte cap. We're going to click right on this gray ball. I'm going to go to this particular matte cap right here. You have all these options. If you want to choose something different, I'm going to choose this one. Then I'm going to look down in this list under options. I'm going to put a check mark next to cavity. And what this does is this tends to make it being Blender easier to see as we work. The edges are easier to see, and this just works. It works very well for allowing us to see what we're doing as we're sculpting. Okay, I'm going to press 1 to go back to front view. Take a look. Okay, I held the middle mouse button to come back to this side view. Holding the middle mouse button to go to the side, not a perfect side, but just a general side. I'm going to this brush right here, which is the flatten brush. I'm going to press F and then shrink my brush slightly. And the reason why I didn't go to the side totally was I wasn't sure if I wanted to see the reference. It's fine seeing a reference. You can go right to the side. So what I'm doing now, I'm clicked on here. I'm going to click here, go to object mode, click here, then go back to sculpt mode. There might be some easier way to do that. That's how I know to switch between the shapes right now. It's fine. It only takes an extra second or so. Anyway, with this flatten brush on, see this area? I didn't click anything yet. The area that my brush is currently in, I want this area basically flattened because on the side of the head, it's flattened. So that's what we're trying to do here. So now I'm left clicking and dragging. You can see me flattening. Now, as you flatten, don't do too much. See this edge right here? You want this edge to be kind of how it is, kind of towards the front. You want this edge here to lean towards the front zone. So I'm going to hold them in the mouse button, and that's pretty good right there. Now I'm going to hold Control, hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan down. I'm going to press F to shrink my brush some. See this edge right here? We want to flatten that out some. So I'm not clicking anything yet. I want to flatten from here to here. I'm not clicking anything. I'm just showing you. All right, so now I'm left clicking. I am clicking down, and you can see that now we flatten that area out right there. Okay, what we're going to do now is press 1 to go to front view. Remember, you can go to view, viewpoint as well, and get to your views there. And what we want to do here is, I'm not clicking anything. See where my the top of my pointer is at, right? What I want to do is flatten out this area here, right along here. And basically, the reason why I'm doing that, what's going on is we can only work with this shape right here. Even though we see the shape in front, we can only work with this shape because this is the shape we're currently selected. This is the shape we're currently in scope mode for. So when we flatten out this area here, we're basically making an indent for the eyes there. So I'm going to left click and drag. So I am left clicking and dragging now. So now I flatten that area out. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to the side to take a look. All right, now I'm going to press 1 to go back to front view. I'm going to click near the top left, go to object mode, click this bottom jaw piece, click, go to sculpting mode, and now what I'm going to do is see, so now we're selected on this object, we're in the sculpting mode for this object. What we're going to do is flatten out this area here to match up with this area here. So this is the object we're not selected on, not in scope mode in. This is the object we're selected on in scope mode in. So we're going to flatten this to basically match this other depression we just did a few moments ago. So I'm gonna, now I'm left clicking and dragging. See that? So now I'm gonna turn to the side. So kind of doing those together makes a depression for the eyes there. So let me go back to front view. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to object mode, click here. I want this to be more sloped, and the way I can do that is after doing what we just did, this talking particularly about what we did with this top object. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis. You just want to press S to scale on the Z axis just slightly. That tends to give you a little bit more of a slope. And then also for this, I'm going to pull back slightly for that. I'm going to, with this clicked on, actually that should be good there. See where this 3D cursor is at? We're in object mode currently. In Blender, where the 3D cursor is at is where objects tend to come into Blender at. What we're going to do is hold Shift, press A. We're going to go to an empty. We're going to go to cube. Here's our empty cube. We're going to press S to scale that empty down. We don't need to see it. See that empty? We're going to use that empty to help us mirror objects and work with objects. So that empty is fine where it's at. Since that empty is there, I'm going to hold Shift and then right click to move the cursor here. Move the cursor here because in Blender, where the 3D cursor is at, is where objects tend to come into Blender at. I'm now going to hold Shift, press A. This brings up our Add To menu. I'm then going to go to Mesh. Then I'm going to select Cube. If you're new to this channel and you hear me speaking fast, and you're like, "Oh, he's speaking very fast." I'm speaking fast because I am going to attempt to say what I'm doing, as well as why I'm doing it when that comes to my mind. So it's a lot of speaking. So I'm gonna try to speak fast so I can get it out so we can move to this tutorial because we have a lot of work to do. Okay, so with this cube here selected, I'm gonna click to the upper left, go to edit mode. I'm then gonna right click, select subdivide, right? Before, if you've watched tutorials on this channel before, there used to be a subdivide smooth. As far as I know, that's not in Blender 2.8. It's not a problem. We want to smooth this out like we used to with subdivide smooth. Now, when I subdivided this, which we just did, over to the left, you can see this little subdivide menu. We're going to click this triangle here, and then we see this smoothness here. So we're just going to left click and drag this to the side, and this makes this look like a subdivide smooth. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis to basically thin that out. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Hold the mouse button to rotate the view. Then I'm going to click near the upper left and then go to object mode. I'm now going to pull this out. This is going to be our ear, by the way. I'm going to hold control. While holding control, press 2. And then what that did was a shortcut for putting on the solidify modifier, similar to what we did before. We're going to click apply to apply this solidify modifier. We're going to right click. When we right click, this brought up this object context menu. We're then going to select shade smooth. Okay, with this selected, we're going to press S to scale that down. Take our manipulator and push this over. If you don't see the manipulator, by the way, make sure you click on this and you'll see it. Let's press front view. Here's our ear here. Let's press 3. All right, now let's hold the middle mouse button, rotate, so we can get a more 3D view. We're going to press R to rotate on the Z axis like this. Drag this back further, press 3. This isn't going to match up perfectly with our reference image. Okay, I'm going to press 1 on the number keypad. And with this ear selected, what we're going to do, this reference image, the front image will match up more closely with what we're doing in the side image. The side image still useful. Just don't be concerned if things are off a little on the side. Okay, so with this selected, we're going to go to add modifier. We're going to go to mirror, and then see this mirror object. We're going to click here, and this empty here is our the empty that we're using to mirror objects. We're going to left click there. Now when we did that, we can see that the mirror of this was set so it's on the other side. It's because it's using that empty that we had brought in previously. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. Our 3D cursor is here. To get it back to the center, we can hold shift, press C. 3D cursor jump back to the center. Our work and everything jumped out too. So what we can do is just hold shift, press B, draw a zoom box, and we're right back. Our 3D cursor is in the center. We're going to hold shift, press A. This brings up our add to menu. We're going to select the cube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also, I know I'm speaking fast, there's a little gear, should be to the right, down and to the right. If you click there, you can slow the speed down, and that should be able to help you out if I am going too fast for you. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis, right? So here's our cube. We're basically going to use this cube to make a lot of objects. Right now, we're currently going to make a neck from this. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold control, press 2. That put a subdivision surface modifier on here. We're then going to click on the upper left, go to edit mode, hover here, hold control, press R. That put a loop cut in. Because we're going to click one time, because we didn't click once, we can move this loop cut. We're going to move this up, not all the way up. Now we're going to move our mouse down, hold control, press R, just put another loop cut in. We're going to left click once, move this down like that. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to go to the upper left, select object mode. And now what I'm going to do is right click, select shade smooth. After it's important that what we're about to do, I'm about to apply this modifier, right? Make sure you put in your loop cuts first, then apply the subdivision surface modifier. Just in case, just saying this, if you're doing this from memory, something you're like, which was it? Did he apply it first or put the loop cuts in? Put the loop cuts in first, then apply your subdivision surface modifier, right? So first the loop cuts, then the subdivision surface modifier. So with me saying, first loop cuts, then the subdivision surface modifier, we'll click apply. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis. We're going to keep this right here. We're going to keep duplicating this when we need this. This is our main basic shape. We're going to hold shift, press D, right click, bring this down, press S to scale. This is our neck. We're going to press 3, press R to rotate. So you can see Blender 2.8 lets you see how far this is going into the head. Be careful of how far this goes into the head because it can cause you issues. So if you press S, and then Z. See how that line goes straight up and down? Press Z again. Now the line lines up with the tilt of your shape that we're working with for the neck. I'm going to press S to scale Z twice. To make this longer, I want to be careful about how much this is going into the face though. I'm going to press R to rotate. And I left clicked on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to, actually for this, before we do that, click on this, hold Control, press 2, put another subdivision surface on here. This thing I'm telling you to do is just for the neck, by the way. We're doing this. So we put on one subdivision surface already. We applied it, right? That was on this. We duplicated this. Now, just for the neck, we're putting another subdivision surface on and clicking apply. As for what we're going to do later, we're going to use a smooth modifier. If you don't put that on the neck, just makes things more difficult. So anyway, then we won't be doing that for the other pieces that we use. So we're going to click here, hold Shift, press D, right click, push this down. We're going to press S to scale this down. This is going to be our nose. Surprisingly, it works out fairly well as a nose. So we're going to push this forward. When you push this forward, basically what you're doing is it's going to come to around this area here. Like, so here's the line here. Let's press S to scale on the Z axis. And you're going to turn to the side. So I held the middle mouse button, turn to the side. You're going to press R to rotate on the X axis like that. It's just a fairly easy way to get a nose. So our nose here we can see is too long. So we're going to press S to scale on the Z axis twice. So I pressed S to scale on the Z axis twice. Now from the front, that's kind of hard to see what I was doing. So I pressed S and then Z twice. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate, pressing 1 to go back to front view. I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis. That looks good. Okay, so we're going to zoom back. We're going to click here, hold Shift, press D, right click. Take this, push this down. We're going to press S to scale this up. And when I'm scaling this up, what I'm looking at is the sides here. All right, I'm looking at the sides. So I'm not looking from top to bottom. I'm pretty much just looking from side to side. Now I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like this. Push this down. I'm looking at the shoulders now. S to scale on the Z axis like this. I'm going to press 3 to go to the side. I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis. S to scale on the Y axis again, like that. Okay, I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis. S to scale on the Z. What I'm doing now is I am looking at this area right here as well as right here around where the top of the torso should be. At least where I think it should be at. I'm going to press 1 to go to front view. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go to edit mode. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to press C for paint select. I'm going to select this area right here. I'm going to push the middle mouse button to deselect right there. I'm going to right click. I'm going to press E to extrude, then right click. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to click to the left to select my manipulator. I'm going to pull up like that. I'm going to click here so you can see how far I pulled up right there. I just click the wireframe button. I'm going to click back. So now we're back in solid view. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to left click on nothing to deselect. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to select here. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle. Well, I'm holding shift as well. No middle mouse button. Holding shift and just left clicking. I'm going to press 1 to go back to front view. I'm going to press Alt, hold Alt, then press O to turn on the connected proportional editing. You click up here. You can do this manually. You can also see that circle there is our connected proportional editing. Proportional editing allows you to move more than one vertex, edge, or face at a time. Connected proportional editing keeps things more generalized to exactly what you have selected. What we want to do here is pull this area up here to basically try to match up with the rib cage area right there. Okay, so I'm going to press G and then Z. You can see it's working fairly well. So see when I'm pulling this up, there's an edge, right? So if I push up, both edges are almost touching each other, but then when I roll the mouse, the edges spread out more, and that's what you want to do. So I'm going to left click to lock that in. Okay, I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to click to go back to object mode. I'm just taking a look and seeing what we have here. Okay. I'm going to press 1 to go back to front view. I'm actually going to click here. And then I'm going to select random, just so we can see, have an easier time seeing our different shapes. Because when we clicked here and selected random, Blender takes all of our different shapes and makes them different colors. So pretty cool. I'm just making sure I didn't have a duplicate already. I'm gonna hold Shift, press D, then right click, push this down like this. I'm gonna press S to scale on the Z axis. Pressing just scale now. I'm gonna press S to scale on the Z axis here. Holding the middle mouse button to take a look. I'm gonna press 3 on the number keypad. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis. Press 1 to go back to front view. I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis. Then left click to lock that in. I'm going to click here. Hold Shift, press D, then right click. So I duplicate it, then I right click to get that to just stay in place. Bringing this down. I press S to scale on the X axis like this. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis. Pull this back. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button, rotate the view. I'm going to click here, press R to rotate on the X-axis sum. Click here. Press R to rotate on the X-axis. Right there. Bring this down. 1. Press S to scale on the X-axis. I'm going to left click to lock that in. So I'm going to left click here, hold Shift, press D, right click, move this to the side, push this over here like this. Press 3 to go to side view. Press S to scale on the Y axis like that. Press 1 to go to front view. Now left click here, hold Shift, press D, right click. Bring this down here like this. 3 to go to side view. that. I'm going to press 1 to go back to front view. Move this to the side. Something like that. And I left click. Actually, I'm going to pull up. Okay, that's, I thought that I had made a duplicate. I'm actually going to right click, hold shift, press A to bring up our add to menu. I'm going to bring in a new cube. I'm going to hold control 2, put a subdivision surface on that. Press S to scale on the Z axis like this. I went to edit mode for it. I'm going to hold control, press R, put a loop cut almost all the way at the top. Left click to lock that in, hold control, press R, put another loop cut in because I only left click once. I can move this loop cut, bring this almost all the way to the bottom. Left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold control, press R, move my mouse, and I have a loop cut going vertically. I'm going to left click once, move this almost all the way to the side. Left click on nothingness to deselect, hold control, press R, move my mouse, I have a vertical loop cut, left click once, so I can move this almost all the way to the side, and then left click to lock that in. Then I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Then I'm going to left click near the upper left, then go back to object mode. I'm going to right click and then select shade smooth. Okay, I did that because I wanted a more squarish shape. I'm going to hold shift, press D. And my thinking in this is when you are just holding the middle mouse button to rotate, I'm going to press R to rotate on the x-axis, -9, 0, and then left click to lock that in. When you're sculpting, sometimes things can get more round than you want them to. I'm going to press 1, go back to front view. So I wanted something that was more squarish to kind of help me go against that. Press S to scale on the Y axis. I'm going to go to edit mode. Since we did not, I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. Selecting these edges right here. Since we didn't apply this subdivision surface yet, press 3, press G. Hold them in the mouse button, rotate the view. I'm going to left click on nothingness. Go back to object mode. I'm now going to apply this. Okay, I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back. Just taking a look at everything here. Press 1. Click here, push this off to the side for now. I'm going to left click here, hold shift, press D, right click. We're working on the one side because we'll mirror what we need to the other side. We're going to push this down here. I'm going to press R to rotate on the... Actually, you know what? When I say when you're in orthographic view, one nice thing is you can just press R to rotate, and your rotation will be like you see. I press S to scale. If you want to scale this to make it longer, if I press S to scale and Z, then Z, see how that preview line is? Well, it will not make this scale correctly, but if I press Z again, now we can scale in a way that it's better for what we're trying to do. So basically, what I'm doing now is I'm thinking about the other geometry I'm going to bring in, as well as where the elbow joint is around here. Now, as I do this, I'm realizing that I'm going to have to adjust this when I change the view. However, for now, I'm just concentrating on this front view. All right, so now I'm going to press 3. I'm going to press, I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to press R, then X twice just to rotate the arm slightly. I'm going to press 1 to go back to front view. I'm going to left click here, hold shift, press D, right click. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis. I'm basically working on the hand here. I'm going to press S to scale on the S to scale on the Y axis like this. The reason why I'm not aiming this like the hand is because it's easier to work as far as having things be up and down currently. Press 1, click here, hold shift, press D, right click. Hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. Press S to scale. Like that. I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click. Like this. I'm gonna hold the middle mouse. I rolled the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm holding shift to the middle mouse button to pan. I'm holding shift again. I'm gonna hold shift, then press D, then right click to duplicate. Moving this here, holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view, bringing this back like this. I'm gonna press 1 to go to front view. I'll press R to rotate like that. Click here. I'll press S to scale on the Y axis like that. Click here. I'll click here, press R to rotate on the X axis like this. Give it a slight bend to the finger. Press R to rotate on the Y axis like this, thumb. Okay, I'll hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm gonna hold shift, press D. Didn't want that. This is an extra one. I'll click there. Get rid of that. I'll click here, hold shift. I had duplicated right before I moved the other one. If you're like, what just happened? That's what happened. I'll click here. I'm gonna hold shift, press D, right click. Bring these over like this. I'll move these over some, press S to scale. Click here, press R to rotate on the Y axis. Like that. I'll press S to scale on the X axis like this. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back. I'll press C for paint select. Take my manipulator and bring this forward like this. Holding control of the middle mouse button to take a look at what's going on. Okay, I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis, 9, 0, and then left click to lock that in. Again, it looks different here because it's easier to work with when it being the hand is like that. Left click to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold shift. While holding shift, I'm going to right click. When I did that, I moved the 3D cursor to here. I'm going to move the 3D cursor actually right to there. I'm going to hold shift, press A. This brings up our add to menu. I'm then going to go to UV sphere. Press S to scale that up some. I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. Pull that back like that. Press 1. Click here. Moving this down. Some like that. Click here, press S to scale on the Z axis, press Z again, and then you can scale in an easier way. Hold the middle mouse button to take a look, see what's going on. I'm going to left click to deselect. I'm going to click here, hold shift, press D, right click. Move this down, press S to scale. I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click, move this down. Place of our knee, I'll press S to scale. I'm going to press 1 to go to front view. Left click here, hold shift, press D, right click, bring this down, move this over, bring this back, this. I'm going to click here, hold shift, press D, right click, holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis like this. Bring this over to here, press R to rotate on the X axis like that. Push this forward, press S to scale. I'll press S to scale on the Y axis. That. Okay, I'm gonna click here, hold shift, press D, right click. You can see I'm just duplicating these shapes, trying to get them generally where they should go. I'm gonna press S to scale the Y axis. Press R to rotate on the X axis here. S to scale on the X axis right there. Okay, I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to our modifier. It looks like a wrench. I'm going to click here. Select mirror modifier. For the mirror modifier object, I'm going to left click here. I'm going to type in EM. I'm going to select our empty so we can see here's our empty right here, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the different pieces that we want to have a mirror modifier on them. Hand has a bunch of pieces, so I'm going to press C to paint select all of them. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to take a look. Okay, with those pieces selected, I'm going to hold Shift and then click this piece. This piece, I let go of Shift. This piece is highlighted like a lighter orange than here. This because this is the active piece. This is the last piece selected. That's important because I want all of these objects to take the modifier from this object, which is a mirror modifier. All right, so this is the last thing we clicked with Shift. And now with that done, I'm going to hold Control, press L. This brings up our Make Links menu. We're then going to left click on Modifiers. And then all of our shapes that we had selected took on the mirror modifier. So I left click to deselect. Left clicked on nothing, deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. We don't want the shapes touching in the center. The arms, by the way. So I'm selecting all this. I'm going to press C for paint select to select here. I'm just holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Arms, I'm going to press 3 so you can see this. The arms should be back more. You don't want the arms to the front. I'll press 1. Okay, I'm going to left click to deselect. Okay, since we have most of our shapes in, if we need anything else, we'll add it. We can start shaping these shapes. So this is actually supposed to be neck muscle here. I'm going to click here, go to sculpt mode, and sculpt mode doesn't like the modifier there, so that's why it disappeared. So I'm going to go to the grab brush. For this part, you do not want for this part you don't want dynamic topology on yet. The reason why I said up was I want to go to the top here, go down to symmetry lock. Symmetry lock up, click the triangle to see it. Symmetry lock is kind of like mirror modifier automatically in sculpt mode. So automatically by default this mirror X is on. So I'm going to click this off so that I can work with this neck piece right here. I'm going to press 1. So yeah, that neck piece, I would recommend you start off from the back since it's generally positioned from the back. I'll deflate this I'll hold smooth to thin that out. Same thing here. Neck muscles like run into the back of your head. Just pressing smooth in the front there. I'm gonna go back to object mode. Click here, go to front view, edit mode. We still have that mirror, that symmetry off, by the way, will work for, oh, I'm going to go to sculpt mode, not edit mode. Will work for, it'll stay off for our other objects as well. Hold the middle mouse button, pull that down some there. I pressed F to scale to bring the brush size down. we're just aiming towards our general, shapes. Don't most of our work will be done in scope mode once these pieces are joined. So with this here, see this line here, right there, right here. That's basically what we want to do now. So I'm going to click, go to scope mode. Okay, this is a center piece here. When you're working with a center piece, you want to make sure you have that mirror mode on, that X on. Hold them the mouse button to rotate. Holding shift here, just move that out some. I'm going to go to inflate. What I'm thinking here is I just want, when this merges, I want it to merge well. Let's press 1. Okay, we're going to turn this off. That being the X mode. Go to object mode, click on the chest, go to scope mode, hold the mouse button, rotate. We're going to hold shift. Whenever we press shift, we activate the smooth brush. There's those edges there. Okay, let's go to object mode. Let's click here. Go to scope mode. Press 1. Grab brush. Hold up the mouse button so we can see a different angle. Smooth out the back some there. Holding shift is what I'm doing now. When I let go of shift, it brings me right back to the grab brush. Shift there, pressing 1. Go to object mode, click here. Go to scope mode. We still have our symmetry mode off. I'm going to go to the inflate brush, pressing 1. See this right here? That's what I'm trying to get. Right now I'm looking at this here, holding the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm just making this thing thicker here. Pressing 1. I can see on that side we don't have it. We'll mirror this. Click here, go to object mode. It's a blocking mode. You mainly want to, use this to get. Press R to rotate on the Y-axis. And your basics done here. So nice in Blender 2.8, how you can see through your mesh. I'm going to click here, press S to scale on the Z axis like this. I'm going to click my mouse button to rotate. Click here. hold shift, press D, right click, bring this over. I'm going to press 1 to go, 1 to go to front view. I press S to scale here. I press S to scale on the Z axis twice here. I click here, hold shift, press D, right click. I press S to scale on the Y axis here. What I'm looking at here is just the forearm there. Go to scope mode, grab brush. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Click here, go to scope mode. Gonna hold shift. Okay, let's go to object mode. Okay, yeah, I was thinking that wasn't there. This piece that is. Press 1. Yeah, kind of like how that worked out there. Actually, so click here, hold shift, press D, right click. Press S to scale. Hold the mouse button to rotate. Notice how when I bring the muscles in, I change the view. It definitely helps to have some knowledge of where the muscles go. Like the calves go towards the back of the leg. Go back to scope mode. Inflate. Here, go back to front view. Press S to scale. The middle mouse button to rotate. One thing that amazes me about tutorials is you learn a lot making tutorials. You might sit there and say, well, if you're making the things, you know, how are you learning? But I think because when you're doing a tutorial, your mind is thinking about, I'm just holding shift here, by the way. I think your mind is holding shift just to move this. That's how I'm moving this. I'm holding shift. So even though you see grab here, I'm holding shift, and that smooths this out. It's like getting this to where I want. I think because you're in like thinking mode, you think differently, and you tend to learn a lot from making tutorials. one. Go to object mode, click here. Go to scope mode. I have the grab brush. Pulling out there. As well as there. Holding shift for here. Now I'm taking a look to see how this is doing as far as the 3D-ness of it, if you will. Putting a bend in here. Go to object mode. Push this over. Be careful. These don't, you don't want these to touch when I press X to scale these down. I click here, press S to scale on the Y axis, then bring these back like that. Okay, I'm going to hold control as well as the mouse button to zoom back. Press 1. See this right here. So what we're going to do is go to scope mode. This is a centerpiece now, right? So because this is a centerpiece, we're going to go to our symmetry lock, press X to turn that back on. So hold the middle mouse button. Take a look. I'm going to press F to shrink this brush. Bring this forward some, holding shift. Okay, so we still have our symmetry on, so let's click here, zoom in. Let's go to sculpt. Press F, we'll go to our grab brush. Push in here like this. Go back, hold them in the mouse button to take a look. Press 3. Again, object mode, click here. Okay, we're going to go to sculpt mode. This is a center part, so we still have our symmetry lock on there. We have the grab brush selected. Pull out like that. You can see how this is. That looks off, so let's click here. We'll go to sculpt. This is not a centerpiece, so we'll click here. Pull this down like that. We'll click the torso. Go to sculpt. This is a centerpiece, so we'll turn this back on. We have the grab brush selected. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Let's go to our inflate. I pressed F to shrink the brush, control. And I just made the torso by holding control. Control does the opposite of inflate. Inflate makes things come out. When you hold control, it makes things go in. Okay, I'm holding the middle mouse button. I'm going to go to the grab brush for symmetry lock 1. I'm going to go to the inflate brush instead of the grab brush. I'm inflating this top area here. I'm going to press F, deflate, right around where the neck is at. And go to object mode, click here, go to scope mode, turn off the symmetry lock since this is not a centerpiece. It's towards the center, but there's two separate pieces. So with the inflate brush, I'm just going to thicken this up some. Press shift, click right there. That's why that jumped to like that. Left click, then back to object mode. Click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan the view. Click here, go to scope mode. And let's go to the flatten brush. Go to this side here. Try to dodge that bottom, let it stay nice and flat. You want to hit the sides, not the bottom. See how the bottom is flat? Make things easier for us. Press 3. Let's go to grab brush. Pull that up. I would recommend you don't, work with that flat. You leave the flatness alone. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y axis like this. As a matter of fact, this top here, let's click here, go back to scope mode. This is our flatten brush. We'll try to flatten that top right there. Flatten is kind of like a super version of the smooth brush, by the way. If smooth is not working well enough for you, use the flatten brush. Okay, we're going to go to object mode. We're going to go to edit mode. I'm going to go to face select, press C for paint select. Select this area right here. Press C, hold the middle mouse button to deselect there. I'm going to press O, then G, then X. Bring that over some like that. And by doing this in edit mode, this helps us to basically keep our flatness there. We're just telling you about. Not left click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to go to edge select. I am on edge select now. Click here, press G, X, pull that out to the side there. When you're shaping these things, even when you're doing blocking, sometimes I am concerned about changing the shape too much in the blocking, because one of the things we want to do is when we join these shapes together, we want to make sure that we have, when I click here, push this over. So like we want to make sure that we have a non-manifold, don't have any manifold shapes. I should say non-manifold shapes. It's one of the reasons why you heard me saying don't let things cross, like here, as well as here, because those manifold shapes, it is very annoying. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Very annoying to try to fix them. I press 1 to go to front view. I'm going to click on the chest here. Go to scope mode. Symmetry lock is off. I'm going to grab the grab brush. Pull that down some. This space here popped up, so I'll go to the inflate brush. Snake hook works like another grab brush, by the way. What I'm doing now is I'm actually pulling again. I'm somewhat nervous about manifold shapes I told you about. Pulling this underneath. I'll press F to shrink this. Press Shift. Holding Shift to smooth that. Go back to object mode. So I guess we'll go ahead and join. Let's make sure that we have a good overlap for things that we need to overlap. And let's see if we can if we made it through without having manifold faces. So to join this together, it's easy to do with the boolean tool. So you want to make sure you go to a boolean add-on, I should say. You can join this together with boolean a boolean modifier. However, the boolean add-on just makes things a lot easier. If you go to edit preferences, and down in the preferences, there we go. Object bool tool. You want to make sure you have a check mark next to this. Object bool tool. So if you have that selected, when you press the N key, you'll see this thing that says tools here. If you left click there, see it says auto boolean. This is what you want. This makes this whole process much easier. Okay, the current date is 2019, February 15th. If you download the most current version of Blender, you should have that bool tool add-on. This is the Blender 2.8 beta that I'm currently using. Okay, so what we're going to do is press 1 to go to front view. Click this. Move this up out of the way. This as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on wireframe mode. I'm going to press B for box select, and I'm going to select our entire mesh. This was selected by accident, so I'll hold shift, still holding shift, and I click that light as well. I'm going to click here now to come out of wireframe. I'm going to hold control to zoom in. So we have this entire mesh selected. Now we want to hold shift and then click here. Here being the top part of the head. This top part of the head is highlighted a lighter orange than the rest of the body. That is because this is the active object. So when we use this boolean modifier, the rest of the pieces of the body will be joined to here. Okay, I'm back from the future. This didn't make it. The hands didn't make it. So what we're going to do is we're going to click here, press X, delete them. We're going to click here, hold shift, press D, right click. And if you say make it, what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is there's manifold issues. Typically when you have spheres crossing each other, you'll have issues. I thought these might make it, but they didn't. So we're going to use this. This would be very similar to what we did have. Spheres tend to do much better than, I mean, not spheres, subdivided cubes tend to do better. I'm going to hold shift. While holding shift, click here, hold control, press L, then select modifiers to get that to join. I'm going to go to sculpt mode. I'm going to press 1. If you're sitting there in annoyance right now, the annoyance that you feel at me doing this will be, I think, will be much less than the annoyance you would have at trying to deal with manifold issues. They are very frustrating. Okay, let's see what's going on here. There we go. So we'll shape this somewhat like we did before. Shift. Shift here. Just hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Okay, so I'm going to click here, go to object mode, then left click. Okay, I'm going to go to wireframe mode, hold control, hold the right mouse button to select the hands. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back, holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I'm pulling these hands out to the side. I am left clicking on nothingness, deselect. Now pressing B for box select to select everything but our hands. I'm now going to click to go to solid view. I'm going to go to union. And that joined all of our shapes together. Okay, so far, so good. Here's the moment of truth. We click on our mesh. We go to edit mode. We go to vertex select. Click on nothingness to deselect. And then what we do is we go to select. Select all by trait and select non-manifold. See that right there, how nothing is lighting up? That's what you want, and that means that you will be able to sculpt for the most part without having issues. So that is a very good thing. Okay, so for now we'll work on our main body. We'll come back to the hands. So we're going to go to sculpt mode. Now you can see that when we go here, all of our pieces are joined together. We're going to click to put a check mark next to dynamic topology. We'll click the arrow. This detail size that says 12, we're going to click here. We're going to change this to 5. We're going to press enter to lock that in. We're then going to put a check mark next to smooth shading. Okay, we're going to go to where we see shading. We're going to change this to material. We're also going to put we have a check mark next to cavity. That's a good thing. Okay, so everything should be good with our main body. We're going to click here, go to object mode. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan over. I'm going to left click here. I'm going to hold, actually I'm going to press X and then delete that UV sphere right there. I'm going to left click here, hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. I held the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Okay, in between videos I learned that for whatever reason the boolean modifier does not like these fingers. So I just selected them by holding C. I'm going to press X to bring up our delete menu, then choose delete to delete them being the fingers. Okay, the good news is that it seems to be fine with our original shape. So I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click. So I duplicated that shape right there, right? Holding the middle mouse button, rotate the view. Okay, so with that duplicate selected, I'm going to hold shift, then while holding shift, I'm going to right click. I'm then going to hold shift, press S. This brings up our snap to menu. I'm then going to choose selection to cursor. Actually, I prefer selection to cursor offset. So now we had that duplicate of that shape jump right to there. So I did that just because that's an easier way to move this over to here. So I held shift, right click, put the cursor here, clicked on the duplicate, and then I pressed shift S, and then I used the snapping feature in Blender to just pull this shape over. So now with this selected, I'm going to press S to scale. So now I'm positioning this finger here. I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click, pull another finger to the side, hold shift, press D, right click, pull another finger to the side, hold shift, press D, right click, pull another finger to the side. Okay, now I'm going to hold shift, select all of these fingers here, press S to scale them down. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis to give them some length. I'm going to click to our pivot point. I'm going to change the pivot point from the Blender's default medium point to individual origins. The reason why I did that is now when I press S to scale, I'm able to scale the fingers down to make sure that they're not touching each other. Push these fingers in. Press S to scale them up some. I'm going to hold shift, press D, then right click. Bring these fingers down like this. Hold the middle mouse button, rotate. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y axis like this. Just put a slight bend in the fingers. going to left click to deselect on nothingness to deselect, or click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to hold them in the mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to click here, hold shift. So holding shift allowed me to select more than one shape at a time. I'm going to hold shift, press D, then right click. I duplicate it. I right click to keep everything in place, moving this down into the side to be a thumb. I press R to rotate on the Z axis. I'm going to press R to rotate on the, not that. Oh, I see. I forgot that I'm on individual origins. So the pivot point's on individual origins. We need to change this back to the medium point. Now I want to press R to rotate on the X axis like this. So I'm just rotating to get a better look at what's going on here. Looks like the fingers are all separated from each other up top, which is good. Okay, 3D cursors here. Where the 3D cursor is at is where objects tend to come into Blender at. I'm going to hold shift, press A. This brings up our add to menu. I'm going to select a cube, moving the cube up. I'm going to go to edit mode. The reason why I'm making a cube, I'm going to right click, select subdivide, go to our subdivide menu here, take this up to 1. Left click on nothingness to deselect, go back to object mode. I found that when you need a circular shape, as far as working with the boolean modifier or the boolean add-on, it works better with subdivided cubes than it does with UV spheres. They're both circular shapes, so this tends to work well. Okay, so I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click, scale this down, hold them in a mouse button so I can get a more center, press S to scale this down more. I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in, hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. For this piece here, I'm going to not hold, press S, then press Y, X to flatten this out. I'm going to press S to scale. I'm going to click on our thumb here. I held shift when I did that. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis. I'm going to hold shift, press D, right click, pull this out here. Holding the middle mouse button to take a look. Press R to rotate on the Z axis. Press S. Scale that down. I'm trying to have them not touch. Now I'm looking at here, this needs to go more into the hand, it looks like. Holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan, holding control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom back. I'm going to left click to deselect. So I left clicked on nothing to deselect everything else. Okay, I'm going to click here, press S to scale down more, move this more into the hand like that. I'm going to left click to deselect all the other objects. Okay, I'm gonna hover my mouse here, press B for box select. So all of the pieces of the hand are selected. I'm going to go to our boolean menu here, then select union. Okay, when you click, it looks like everything is good, but you really can't tell until go to edit mode. Make sure I'm on vertex select. Left click on nothingness to deselect everything. See how nothing is currently highlighted, right? So now I clicked off again. Now nothing is highlighted. So we go to select with vertex select on. Select all by trait, non-manifold. Now nothing is hiding. Nothing is highlighting, and that is excellent because that means that we are good. This is a good Boolean union. Okay, what we're going to do now is go to our upper left, go to object mode. Push this hand over, hold shift. And we want to make sure that this is actually being pushed in to this part of the arm. We're going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. We're going to go to our modifier menu. We're going to click to add a modifier. We're going to select mirror. We're going to go to mirror object. We're going to type in EM. We're then going to select empty. Okay, we're going to press 1 to go to our front view. We're going to press R to rotate. I'm going to left click on nothingness. Just taking a look at things. Okay, we're going to click on our hands. We're going to hold shift and click on our main body. We're then going to go to our Boolean add-on menu. We're then going to select union. So now they are joined as one object. Okay, to make sure they're good, we need to click, go to edit mode, left click on nothingness, go to select all by trait, then select non-manifold. And this looks good. Okay, we're going to go to our upper left. We're going to go to object mode. What it seems like what needs to be done for the hands is for first the parts of the body to be joined, and then the hand to be joined separately, and then after the hand is joined separately, then for the hand to be joined to the body. Okay, with all that done, we need to go to scope mode, to the top button, down to dynamic topology. We need to make sure we look at symmetry lock and make sure that this X is on. We're then going to go to overlays and then come down to where we see geometry, put a check mark next to wireframe. Okay, if you come to your mesh and you start to work and you only see your geometry changing on one side, see right here, this dot is our origin point. So right now the origin point is here. When we go into scope mode, the scope mode is going to work off the origin point. So this origin point needs to be in the center. So what we're going to do is hold shift, press S, and then we're going to choose cursor to selected, and it went to the origin point there. So what we can do is, that's not what we wanted, by the way. We're going to press 1. We're going to hold shift, press C. So now our 3D cursor is right directly in the center. Currently the origin point for our mesh is right here. This origin point right here is going to have our sculpt mode as far as symmetry not work right. However, by taking the origin point and moving it to where this 3D cursor is, everything will work right as far as symmetry. So what we're going to do is click Object, go to Set Origin, and then we're going to select Origin to 3D Cursor. So now our origin point is right here, which is on the 3D cursor. However, that 3D cursor happens to be right in the center of our mesh. So this is good. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to Scope Mode, go all the way to our right, turn on Dynamic Topology. We're now going to select the Simplify brush. We're selecting the Simplify brush. You want to make sure you went to Overlays and clicked here to turn this wireframe mode on. You also want to make sure that you have your symmetry lock on. You should have this X highlighted blue. With all that done, I'm going to press F to shrink my brush down. Parts like this rib cage is fine being how it is for now. We want to take pieces like where the legs and arms are joined together. Take this Simplify brush. You see how when I go over this edge here, the geometry increases. Now I hold shift automatically will switch. When I hold shift on the brush will automatically change to temporarily to the smooth brush until I let go of shift. So it's kind of like you go over with the simplify, then hold shift. So I'm holding the mouse button to turn. I want to make this join together more. When I say this, I mean this part of the leg as well as this right here. So I'm not holding anything. I go over, let go of shift. I mean the left there. I was holding the left mouse button. Now I'm letting go of left mouse. Now I'm holding shift. Now I'm holding the left mouse button again. When I do that, now I'm letting go of everything. This simplify brush temporarily switches to this smooth brush. Use this smooth brush so much. That's why I assume that when you hold shift, you switch to that smooth brush. You do tend to use it a lot. So that this is actually extremely useful. So that's pretty much what we need to do to join these different pieces together. So they're joined together already. We need to join them together even more. And you can see like here, what we did here compared to here. All right. So that's what I mean when I say join together, because we already joined them together. Now we're making the joining of them together smoother. Okay, so holding shift to the middle mouse button, pan, we're just going here. So I'm just pretty much going back and forth between holding shift. So I'm not holding shift, and still holding shift, letting go of shift, not holding shift, now holding shift, blending this together, letting go of shift, held the middle mouse button to rotate, not holding shift, now I'm holding shift. Not holding shift, holding shift. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate, not holding shift, holding shift. Not holding shift, holding shift. Holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan, not holding shift, holding shift. Not holding shift, holding shift. Not holding shift, holding shift. I'm going to hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan. If you're like, why do I keep saying holding shift and all that? When I started this channel, I partially made it because of some frustration with a lot of, often people seeming to say, you don't need to see this, or I don't need to see that. You understand, I didn't understand. So I used to say, if I made tutorials, I'd say everything. I'd say this, I'd say that. So that's what I'm trying to do. So anyway, not holding shift, holding shift. Not holding shift, holding shift. Hold the middle mouse button, rotate, holding shift to the middle mouse button to pan, not holding shift, holding shift. Not holding shift, holding shift. And we're still on the simplify brush. I'm just joining all these edges together. Hold the middle mouse button, rotate, not holding shift, holding shift. 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 Holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Not holding shift, holding shift. Not holding shift, holding shift. Not holding shift, holding shift.